Solomon, do I need a mic or no? Am I good? Okay. You got it? Okay, very good. Testing.
I hear you.
Testing. All right, good. All right, is everybody ready? Anybody else need a chair, backup chair? Sure? I do. No? Okay. All right, everybody good? Good morning, and thank you all for being here. This is the DA's office weekly press conference, one that often occurs, as it does today, on Mondays. And we are here, obviously, to discuss what we frequently discuss, which is the situation in terms of data and information around gun violence. But more specifically, we are here to speak about a specific homicide, one that has been followed in the media for some time, in which there has been a successful verdict by some of the excellent attorneys in this office, by some of the excellent non-lawyer staff in this office, and by a family that just won't give up. We will get to that. This has to do with the conviction on first-degree murder, possession of an instrument of crime, and in a prior trial, conviction for abuse of corpse in relation to the killing and the dismemberment of Dominique Rem'mie Fells. The defendant here is Akhenaton Jones, that's A-K-H-E-N-A-T-O-N Jones, whose conviction was recently obtained and whose sentencing will occur in September, even though it is a mandatory life without parole sentence for the first-degree murder conviction itself. The sentence has been delayed because the verdict came in very late in the day, and the family should be heard at this sentencing, in addition to any other issues that are necessary for legal reasons to resolve. There's a lot I could say about this case, but frankly, I think there are other people here who are best prepared to talk about these issues, and I'll save some of my comments until I get a little closer to the end. I want to acknowledge some of the good people who are here. We have Bob Listenby, who is the first assistant in this office. Christian Wynn is here, standing in for Bob Wainwright. Bob, of course, is the head of homicide non-fatal shootings. Christian is an assistant supervisor, one of two, for homicide non-fatal shootings, and she is here. Bob is simultaneously in court handling a matter this morning. We have ADA Ashley Tozlowski, and that is spelled, please correct me if it's written wrong, and that is spelled T-O-C-Z-Y-L-O-W-S-K-I, who is a very experienced and talented attorney with the DAO's homicide non-fatal shooting unit and has worked very closely with the family to obtain this conviction as the lead prosecutor on this conviction. We have Tania Leonard, who is director of the DAO's CARES unit, Mariel Dela Cruz, director of DAO's Victim Services unit. We have Terry Fells Edmonds, who is the mother of homicide victim Rem'mie Fells. She has not spoken before, but she will do so today after 5 years. We have Keith Edmonds, father of homicide victim Rem'mie Fells. Here's where it gets a little complicated. We have Desiree Edmonds, who is the sister, and Dejanay Fells, who is the cousin. However, they are known in the family as sister cousins because they are that close, Desiree Edmonds and Dejanay Fells. We also have with us Katrina Fells, and that's spelled with a C, C-A-T-R-E-E-N-A Fells, who's another sister cousin in a slightly different way, but also family of Rem'mie Fells. We have Roland Williams, uncle of homicide victim Rem'mie Fells. Jermise Williams, who is the aunt of homicide victim Rem'mie Fells. We have Kelly Burkhart, who is the victim witness coordinator of the emerging adult unit and also does tremendous work as the LGBTQ plus victim witness coordinator in the DA's office. With us as well is Terrell Brown, who is the director in the Office of LGBTQ Affairs for the City of Philadelphia, who we all knew before that in many capacities, including when he was, when they were in charge of Galea, earlier. All right. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on crime data other than to say this. When I checked publicly available data from the Philadelphia Police Department this morning, it listed 100 homicides. And while that is always a sad number, it's also the lowest number that we've had on this day in over 50 years. The other 2 years that came close, there were 104 by today. So Philadelphia continues having the lowest number of homicides that it's had in over 50 years, year to date, by which I mean on the morning of the 16th of June 2025. We would have to go back more than 50 years to find a number that low for homicides. We also continue, in general, to be either level-ish, or down overall when it comes to violent crime, and crime overall, including property crime, continues to be down. But the story today is really much more about this particular case and the excellent work that was done. I know that you're going to hear some praise for the attorneys and also the folks who do work with survivors, with witnesses, with victims in this office. I know that you're going to hear that because we've already had that conversation in the back with family. Whatever they don't cover, I'll have more to say on that. But there was some tremendous, capable work here done, not only by detectives, Philadelphia Police Department, but by attorneys in this office, including Ashley Tuzlowski, including Kelly Burkhart, including Kathy Lees, among others, who did tremendous work here, both at the level of court activity, but also in the engagement and support of the family of this homicide victim. Again, I have more to say, but I would like to move forward, giving you the information that you need. First, I'd like to call forward ADA Ashley Tuzlowski to discuss in detail this interesting investigation, prosecution, and very recent conviction.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning. As DA Krasner said, we're here because last Monday a jury convicted Akhenaten Jones of first-degree murder and possession of an instrument of crime following about a week-long jury trial. This case stems from an incident that occurred almost 5 years ago to the day in June of 2020 when the city and the world was in the throes of COVID. This was a case where the defendant was charged and now convicted of stabbing Ms. Fells 40 times and then dismembering her body. On June 8th, the upper part of her body was found by civilians floating in the Schuylkill River. About 3 days later, on June 11th, the bottom half of her body, the legs, were found wrapped up in saran wrap in a trash bag, again, along the Schuylkill River. Immediately, homicide detectives became involved after the cause of death had been ruled those multiple stab wounds. Detective Mike Venson, V-E-N-S-O-N, was the assigned homicide detective. He immediately located two witnesses that both testified in different ways at the trial, one in person and one through his prior testimony. Both of those witnesses indicated that they had been with the defendant and the decedent at the defendant's home, that after hanging out and partying for some time, both of those witnesses left when Ms. Fells went into the defendant's bedroom. They left for some time, meaning the witnesses. When they arrived back at the property or back into that common area, Ms. Fells was essentially lifeless on the bed and the room was covered in blood. When Detective Vinson and his partner at the time heard this, they immediately prepared a search warrant for the defendant's property, which was on Powelton Avenue. Again, this is all June of 2020. This investigation happened very fast. The search warrant was executed, and inside, the detectives and the crime scene unit found blood spatter. They found the murder weapon, which was a knife. They found an electric saw that was covered in blood. They found a hazmat suit that the defendant wore when he cut up her body, and it was covered in blood. They collected all of this, obviously, for evidentiary purposes. At that point, an arrest warrant was issued for the defendant, Mr. Jones. He fled, he ditched his cell phone, and he fled all the way to California. It wasn't until November. His arrest warrant, again, was issued in June of 2020. He wasn't located until November of 2020, and that was in Los Angeles, California. He then was extradited back here to Philadelphia. A swab of his DNA was taken and then compared to all of that physical evidence that I just mentioned. And it was all over all of that evidence. What the DNA evidence told us was that all of the blood that was recovered was Ms. Fells on the walls, on the weapon, on the blade of the knife, all over the saw, all over the front of that hazmat suit. But then most importantly was that his DNA was also on those items as well, on the handle of the knife, on the neckline of the hazmat suit. So we were able to put this, that he was the person wearing that suit and doing this to Ms. Fells. There was also video evidence recovered. Detective Kurt Wilson was actually on scene the day of the search warrant canvassing for video, and he did an amazing job putting together a video compilation which showed that the defendant was the only person essentially in and out of that property after we know when this happened. It also showed that video evidence showed him, the defendant, wheeling out a trash can and then a trash bag, putting it into the back of a white van, and then video evidence was able to follow that white van down to the river, ultimately where he dumped parts of her body. And that's ultimately where we found parts of her body. We also were able to recover cell phone evidence from the witnesses that corroborated their entire story, and that was crucial. Detective Thorsten Lucky from Homicide put together an excellent cell phone presentation just to show that their stories was exactly as they said it was. It showed communication between the parties, and that was essential in the conviction as well. I want to thank all the detectives that I mentioned, Detective Vinson, Detective Lucky, Detective Wilson. They did an incredible job. In the face of interesting odds in this case, as you heard, this case is 5 years old. A lot of that was due to COVID. This case happened in the height of COVID, so once the court closures after a year and a half, when we kind of came out of that, this case was kind of at the bottom because it had just happened, and cases that had happened in 2019, 2018, they were the first cases going forward. This case also had challenges because about 2 years in, the defendant decided to represent himself, and that presented some unique challenges that we've all had to deal with over the years. There was an initial trial where the defendant took the stand kind of for the first time in 4 years and presented a scenario that we had never heard of before, that we had never even thought of before, and these detectives acted very swiftly, very fast to kind of combat everything that he told us, and we were able to completely disprove it by the time we stand here today. So I owe them a huge debt of thanks, and the work they did was absolutely amazing. You're going to hear from the family. The last thing I'll say is just it has been an honor to work with all of you. This is a case that I've had for 5 years. I was the DA assigned 5 years ago. I was the DA at the crime scene when we found all of this evidence, and it has been my honor to stand with you for 5 years. The resilience they have shown in the face of insurmountable odds, things they've had to hear over and over again in court, are things that we don't normally hear on homicide cases, things that we don't normally see. And they have been through it, and it's been an honor to see that, and it's been an honor to stand here and get to be a small voice for Ms. Fells.
Thank you, Ashley. It's now my pleasure to call forward Tania Leonard to talk about the work of the DAO's CARES unit, which does intensive work with the families of homicide victims in the first 45 days. Tania Leonard.
Thank you. Good morning. When a life is tragically taken by violence, the impact on families, loved ones, and entire communities is immediate and profound. The Crisis Assistance Response and Engagement for Survivors, or our CARES unit, was created to provide timely, compassionate support to survivors, offering crisis intervention, emotional care, and help navigating the difficult days that follow. Our team is trained to walk alongside families and individuals during their darkest moments, connecting them with mental health resources and practical assistance as they cope with trauma and loss. We're committed to serving all communities with dignity and respect, including members of the LGBTQ community who face unique challenges and vulnerabilities in the aftermath of violence. In cases where an arrest has been made, the CARES unit ensures a warm handoff to the District Attorney's Victim Services Division. This ongoing support helps families stay informed, navigate the legal process, and access continued support throughout the journey toward justice. Our units are not just about response. We're committed to restoring dignity, providing hope, and ensuring no one has to face tragedy alone. The CARES unit is committed to healing, justice, and long-term well-being for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tania Leonard. Now my pleasure to call forward Mariel Dela Cruz, who is the chief of our Victim Services Unit.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mariel Dela Cruz. I'm the Director of Victim Services here at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. I'm honored to be here today to share a little bit more about what our Victim Services Unit, Victim Witness Coordinators, and our team here at the DA's office does to ensure that families and survivors feel supported through the legal process. Our units provide trauma-informed care and services offering everything from court accompaniment to referrals to grief counseling, safety planning, and referrals to other critical resources. We work closely with our CARES and our CARES team to ensure that families, especially those impacted by homicide, receive immediate and compassionate care rooted in dignity and understanding. I want to take a moment to speak directly to the LGBTQ+ community. We see you, we value you, we know, and when harm happens, we have services that affirm your identity and the right for you to heal. As part of the commitment, our office has a dedicated LGBTQ+ victim witness coordinator and liaison. Under my leadership, this role ensures that survivors and families from the LGBTQ+ community receive the specialized and affirming services that they deserve, as well as culturally competent supports that they deserve. From navigating the court process to connecting with resources and offering emotional support, our coordinator, Kelly Burkhart, is here to walk with every family, every step of the way. This is not just about the services we provide. This is also about trust building and relationship building. It's about making sure the LGBTQ+ individuals that we serve know that they're not alone and in seeking justice, healing, and dignity. To every LGBTQ+ survivor and family member, our services are available. Our presence here today reflects our long-term commitment to showing up and doing this necessary work. Thank you.
And it is now my pleasure to ask Kelly Burkhart, that's B-U-R-K-H-A-R-D-T, to come forward and talk about the unique work that she does in this office and her connection to this case.
Thank you, DA Krasner. Thank you, everyone. I first want to thank Ms. Terry and family. You all have been amazing. I have learned so much being the victim witness coordinator on this case. I think when we actually started carving out having a dedicated coordinator and services for LGBTQ folks, this is one of the first incidents that we heard about. And part of actually me hearing about it before us sort of getting our ducks in a row is members of our LGBTQ advisory committee would reach out to me. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Did you hear that this happened? And so it's incredible how word of mouth can happen, but also now that it's coming into our office, we can help provide support sooner to the families, to individuals who are going through probably the worst time of their life. So I want to shout out to our advisory committee members. Thank you so much for your dedication. Thank you so much for always keeping us on top of things. And in regards to the murder of Dominique Rem'mie Fells, the thing that I've learned is resilience, patience, and trust and love. Ms. Terry and I have had many conversations because I was not letting this case go. I feel as the person who works with dedicated members who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community, I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that everyone is taken care of. Maybe that's my hypervigilance, but it's important that these folks, that these families, that all of these individuals are provided resources, provided support there when you get a phone call late at night or early in the morning because something has happened or something else new has happened in their lives. And so I just think that I'm grateful that we have this position. I'm grateful that we have this dedication. And now I think it's time for me to stop talking, to hear from the family, to hear from Miss Terry. Thank you.
Kelly, it's never time for you to stop talking, but since you did, it is in fact time to hear from the family of Dominique Rem'mie Fells. Remy's mother will speak. Other family will stand with her. They may or may not speak. It's entirely up to them. No pressure either way. But it is my pleasure to call forward all the members of the family of Rem'mie Fells who are here with us today.
Good morning. The verdict last Monday brought justice for our daughter, Dominique Rem'mie, but it doesn't take away the pain of losing her. We're deeply grateful to the Philadelphia Police, especially Detective Vincent and his team, as well as the District Attorney's Office for their outstanding work. Dominique's life mattered, and we will continue to honor her memory every day. 5 years to the day, a total of 1,827 days. That is how long it has been since our lives have been upended by the tremendous loss of my daughter. To me, she was Rem'mie, but to our family, she was a daughter, granddaughter, sister, niece, and friend. And this does not feel like a loss that was just within our immediate family, but to the many people who in the summer of 2020 were moved by Remy's story while in the throes of their own life-changing experiences. Today, our family gets back their time to heal, time to grow beyond this experience, time to learn how to live again. And how does that happen? With the support of everyone, and with the ability to seek mental health services. Our appreciation for the team of folks who stuck with this case, stayed through both trials, and offered support to me, my family. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This is just the beginning of our next journey. We look forward to what life looks like on the other side of our loss. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We will shortly go to Q&A. I just have a few comments in advance. Number one, this remains National Gun Violence Awareness Month. And obviously it is appropriate for us not only to talk about data, but to talk about particular cases of homicide, of violence, of gun violence at this moment. But I hope everyone will remember that this is National Gun Violence Awareness Month. The work has to go on. That work needs to be supported in the community. It needs to be supported in government a variety of different ways, both on the end of prevention and enforcement. You've already heard details on this case. I hope you noticed the phone records, the DNA, the careful surgical analysis of video that was put together in a way that refuted a fictional story told by this killer in his first trial. I hope you've heard that. It makes all the difference in the world to be able to bring an open-minded jury all the evidence that they need to hear. So that is point one. Point two, I do want to make sure that we give proper credit to the mayor and to the city for its work in support of LGBTQIA or LGBTQ plus people. The appointment of Terrell Brown, who many of us have known for years as a leading advocate in this community, suggests that they're not just looking for people to nod along. They're looking for people who are really going to stick up for the rights of people like Rem'mie Fells, and that is what has happened in this case. So much credit to the mayor. We know these are difficult times politically to actually stand for equality. I almost choke even having to say that, but we know that these are difficult times for that, and she's not letting up. And so good for the mayor, good for the city that the mayor sticks with that. Now, having said those couple of things, obviously you may have some questions that are for members of the family. If so, I will, as always, play MC. I'll go back and see if they are interested in speaking or not, but I would respectfully request that we try to keep the questions primarily on this case, because out of respect for the family. If you have questions for me on a different topic, then I will be willing to talk with you after the conference is over. But given that they are here and they have spoken so eloquently with their presence and their words, I would ask that questions remain pretty close to the topic of the Rem'mie Fells case and gun violence and similar themes. In no particular order, Josh Sanders, 3 CBS.
Thanks so much. Family, thank you so much for speaking. I do have a question to you. We know that trans women specifically experience 4 times as much violence as our cisgender brothers and sisters. You said today is about remembering a daughter, a sister. One of Miss Terry or Dad, or if you could talk a little bit more about just your daughter and who she was, and how you hope to kind of carry her story forward, even though this is an end of a painful chapter for you. If you'd be willing to share a little bit more about that. If not,
Well, okay, I'm sorry. I was jumping the gun there.
is that something you'd like to speak on? Would you like to speak on? Why don't you come up here, whoever speaks.
How's that?
So your question was, well, who was Dominique? Who was Rem'mie? Rem'mie was our oldest. She was our trendsetter. She was a protector. The fact that she ensured that her sisters Desiree and Dior, that they kept the straight and narrow, even as Dominique was finding her path for herself. Dominique loved her mother above no ends. Dominique always had a purpose, and Terry has shared this story with us many times, that Dominique, she had this vision that she was going to be important. She was going to do something that was going to make a difference in this world. And what has come out of all of this during this time is that through this tragedy, there's been a movement. There's been a true, just people coming out to just understand, and what we've learned, to understand what it takes for the community to come forward and to live their life, to live their purpose, and to not be ashamed or disappointed in what they're wanting to achieve. She was a bright light. She loved butterflies. Butterflies were they were her thing, and she was, and many times, and crazy to say, but she could truly be the voice of reason. reason and clarity. And so we, in her short time with us, the gift that she left us is priceless.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Of me? Sure.
We do, the time that we live in and the LGBTQ folks, are experiencing, it's a different experience for them. It's a different experience for trans folks as well. To know that you have an office that is supportive of the mayor of city, that's supportive of the community, get to be here today and to hear from this family. I mean, how does this galvanize you as you go forward and there may be potential other acts of violence that happen to the community, and how do you go alongside folks and seek justice?
Well, it's an important question because there's a very long, sad history, not only in this country, but in other countries, of groups that are mistreated, discriminated against, stigmatized, being victimized by criminals. Even if you look at the list of serial killers and who they preyed upon, they thought that they were more likely to get away with it if they did it to certain groups, broke people, people of color, if they did it to, people who were involved in certain sort of activities that were frowned upon. That's disgusting. That should never be. And this is what hate gives us. Hate gives us crime. Hate gives us murders. Hate gives us killing. But haters lose. And this hater lost. Akhenaten Jones lost. So yeah, there is a bigger message here. And I am happy to say that we're coming off of a weekend when I think a lot of people expressed that message. And that is that we are not going to support hate. We're not going to allow hate to dictate what happens in our society. We're not going to tolerate division. Haters lose. They're going to lose when they harm people. They're going to lose when their words harm people. And this office intends to follow the history of the city, which is a history of being a cradle of freedom where the fundamental principle was always equality. We believe in equality. Anybody who doesn't believe in it can find out. All right, let me see. Mr. Niklowski from 6ABC.
Forgive me for not knowing specifics of the case, but did this defendant say specifically he was targeting because of the sexual orientation? And if so, how do you ensure for those out there who may be worried about, future events, how do you ensure them that you're going to try and protect them at all costs?
Understood. In terms of protecting people at all costs, I hope these 5 years of effort, not only by the family, but also by this office, by the Philadelphia Police Department, I hope these 5 years of effort, this diligent work that led to these excellent results, I hope that will in some ways speak for us. But let me ask ADA Ashley Tuzlowski to address the more specific issue. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but she did the hard work, so we'll let her give you the answer.
So in terms of why this crime happened, I don't know that we'll ever necessarily know for sure. I can tell you his version of events, and he spun quite the tale. That involved that he was friends with her, that they were quite close. Whether that's true or not, I don't know that we'll ever know. There was information that we had from the witnesses that they did seem friendly. That's pretty much all we knew going into this. What I can say is a crime like this, looking at not just his version of events, but what actually happened, I think it's one of the most savage and personal and hateful crimes I've ever seen. To stab her 40 times, I could think of nothing more hateful. Why he did that, we may never get an actual answer to that. I can assure you that none of us on this stage believed the story that he told. And in fact, it was then completely disproven by DNA evidence, by video evidence that we put together for the second trial. So while we don't know for sure, I think what we do know is that this was completely filled by hate, but why that hate manifested in him the way that did, we may never know. You have a question behind?
Did he know that she was trans?
According to him, yes. Again, that's all we know.
All right, let me me see. Tina Holgate, 29 Fox. Anything? All right, thank you. Let's see. Mr. Dean, I'll get to you in a second. Jack Tomchuk, Metro. Yes, sir.
It was mentioned that there were multiple trials. Can you explain what happened in that first trial? Obviously, there was a second trial.
Sure. I mean, the short version, and I will once again ask ADA Kozlowski to respond, but the short version is the jury in the first trial hung on a couple of the charges, but they convicted on abuse of corpse, and therefore, under the law, we were permitted to retry it. We also were permitted not to retry it, but we wanted to retry it, and so we did. And very, very diligent detective work was done to check into the defense that had been laid out through the testimony of the defendant at the first trial. And it was a lie. Perhaps this explains why, once that work was done, the defendant chose not to testify his second time around. But that, I believe, is a short version. The more specific, wiser version will come from ADA Kozlowski.
Yes, I mean, I think the DA explained it well, but there was an initial trial where for the first time in 4 years, not even in opening statements, not even through 3/4 of the way through the trial, but when the came time for the defense's case in chief, for the first time in 4 years, the defendant came forward with his version of events. He had never given a statement to police, which of course is his right. He'd never come forward with any information, again, his right. But after 4 years, he came forward in front of the jury and for the first time said his version of events where he blamed it on one of the witnesses. Again, we had never had any reason to believe anything other than the evidence that we had. And at that time, you know, we had already rested our case, so we were kind of battling through cross-examination, poking holes in the theory, but ultimately he did admit to the dismemberment in that moment, in kind of a bit of a bombshell moment where in the middle of his testifying for the first time in 4 years, he said, I did dismember her, but I didn't kill her. It was one of the witnesses. So between trials, what we were able to do was pull more hours of the surveillance video, which completely discredited his entire version of events. We were able to then retest the DNA against the witness, which completely excluded the witness. We were able to go further into the cell phone evidence, which again completely disproved his entire version of events. So that's kind of how that came to be. And then ultimately at the second trial, like the DA said, he chose not to testify, and the jury returned their verdict.
I guess I'm not familiar with the hate crime statutes of Pennsylvania, like an attorney or prosecutor like you would, but I guess there wasn't a hate crime charge in this case.
Well, I would love to tell you about that, and I know Kelly perhaps can help me out a little bit because it's something that Kelly and I have been discussing for more than 5 years. In the state of Pennsylvania, LGBTQ plus individuals are not covered by the hate crime statute. It is race and race alone. And that is something that I know has been on the table of discussion for many years, as long as we've been working together on these types of cases, which is over 5 years now. And it's never gotten off the floor. I don't know if that's the right lingo, but it's never gotten anywhere in the state legislature. So if this was a case or any case that happens where we have a crime like this and we definitively have evidence that this was fueled by hate, by who somebody is, in a case like this, we wouldn't be able to charge that because as it stands now, the law in Pennsylvania does not cover a trans woman or a gay person or any LGBTQ person. It only covers race, which is something that I have my personal feelings about, and I'm sure everyone up here does as well, but if this was a case, it wouldn't have even been an option for us. Did I say that right?
Yeah. I mean, part of the other issue is part of the other issue is having the evidence that shows what a hate crime would actually be if it was a law. So if Jones was using derogatory terminology as he was in the act, unless it was recorded or presented to us, we would have no way of knowing if that was actually the case. And that's one of the biggest issues in Pennsylvania with when one party uplifts it and pushes through hate crime legislation, then it may die in the other place, whether it's the House or Senate and House.
Thank you for that. And just to echo the comments, of course, if we're going to have a hate crime statute, and we do, even though it's called a funny thing, which is ethnic intimidation, because some people want to cover some people and not cover other people. But if we're going to have a hate crime statute, it should apply to everyone, including, obviously, LGBTQIA people. This is an issue that's actually active now in the legislature, and I'm hopeful that even in these times, we might see an improvement in that. All right, let me see. Mensa Dean from the Trace. Nothing? All right, very good. I do want to express now, for anyone who has questions that are off of this point, I'll make myself available in the next 15 minutes or so. But I do want to thank the family for being here, for their courage, and to let them know that we appreciate them, and that if they have plans moving forward and we can be connectors or we can be of assistance in some way that is permitted by our narrow lane, we would love to do that. I also want to, I just want to thank them for commending our staff, more specifically, speaking about our staff's, both lawyers and non-lawyer staff's dedication, hard work, compassion, how much time they spent talking to the family so the family would be well informed about what was going on through a very, very grueling 5 years. Among others, they spoke about Ashley, they spoke about Kelly, they spoke about Kathy Lees, and they spoke at length about the detectives whose names have already been referenced here. So I just want to thank them for being here, making themselves available, being so open, and willing to speak to other people, other survivors, other victims, about the importance of going through this process, including the legal process, to find as much healing as they can, as soon as they can. Thank you very much. All right. And now we can all go that way.